Oh dear. This is not yours. Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Navy, so we were initially in Quantico and then Norfolk. And
We don't know what to say.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to start now. What? It's not on? Oh. How do I turn it on? Is this on? Good morning, everyone. We are going to start now. As you will see, the choir did not process in, and here I am already, right on time at 10:30. We are doing something different in place of our Enter, Rejoice, and Come In song. It's not a permanent change, but we're just trying something new and see how you feel about it. So, to begin, I'd like everyone to, on the count of 3, say welcome. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Welcome. Thank you. This is Jackie Williamson's script, and I'm doing it just as she wanted to. And as you know, she is not, as you probably know and will hear in our Book of Life announcements, she and Lori are not here today, but I'm taking over for Jackie here as worship associate. So my name is Sharon. My pronouns are she, her. I guess those are the only two. I am at Jackie's place for the service, and I don't like to do this always, but I will today. Notice I'm wearing bright red, but do not think of me as the Scarlet Woman. Okay. We are the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County, also known as UUFCC, a progressive lay-led fellowship, a liberal religious community doing its best to promote diversity and social justice, and as we like to say, a place where spirituality, reason, compassion, service, and fellowship meet. Before we begin, please note that this service is being broadcast live on YouTube, and it will be available temporarily, I understand, as a recording on the UUFCC YouTube channel later on after the service. Also, it's time to turn off your phones, and when we're finished, I will remind you to turn them back on. As always, when leading the service, I want to thank all the people who make our hour together go smoothly. Tom and Corey and Doug back there for their technological skills. Laura L., Sue and Cheryl for sharing their creativity and decorating our physical space with their usual flair. Although I must confess, Cheryl, I think you're the only one who may be here. I caught my skirt on that piece of driftwood and it toppled over, and I don't think I put it back properly. So you might want to take a look at that. I want to thank our greeters and our membership committee volunteers, and Mary Jane, of course, and Sandy in the office, everybody who works in the kitchen to lay out the goodies that others have brought, and Janet and the choir for our music today. And yesterday, wasn't that great fun, our open mic? We had probably about the same number of people in the audience as were performing, which was quite, it was fun. It was very jolly. Finally, a warm thank you to our guest today, Reverend Sierra Marie Garfeo, who will be speaking to us remotely. Not least of all, I welcome and thank all of you here, online or in person. Whatever your faith or belief or your country of heritage, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. And however you arrived in this room, whether walking in briskly or using a walker or a cane or rolling in on a set of wheels, all of you are welcome here. If this is your first visit with us, please stand or wave and let us know who you are. I think I see somebody who I hope is not too shy. Oh, there's somebody over there too. So would you mind standing up and letting us know who you are and what brought you here?
My name's Ethan. I'm from out of town. I'm actually from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm just kind of here to see a different perspective on Sunday service and everything, and yeah, so glad to be here.
Very cool. Welcome, Nathan. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes? Okay. If you are new but watching us virtually by chance, we can't see you to greet you. Someone's at the door. We can't see you to greet you, but we still welcome you and thank you for choosing to spend your Sunday morning with us. And if you'd like to learn more about us, please ask one of the people who met you at the door, or if you're not here, check the UUFCC.org website. It's full of things. Finally, you can email our office, and that's a simple address, office@uufcc.org. Let us now open this sacred space by turning our attention to the chalice and hearing these words from Melanie Davis, a PhD, who is the manager and trainer of the UUA's Our Whole Lives program. Here are Melanie Davis's words. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, we kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. And while Mary Jane yes, good. While Mary Jane lights our chalice here in the sanctuary, you at home are free to light your candles there and join us in reciting our affirmation that's printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace to seek truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you, Mary Jane. The prelude today will be Fanfare for the Common Man, played by our choir director, Janet M. Before Janet begins, I want to alert you that the opening words which follow will be by Reverend Sierra Marie Gerfeo, and she will be giving the opening words. Then we will sing the hymn, and in your order of service, the number on the hymn is wrong. It should be number 318. We would be 1. And then we will hear again from Reverend Sarah Marie, whom I will introduce more fully in a few minutes.
Good morning. It is so good to be with you this morning. I'm Sierra Marie, and as my bio says, I live in New Haven, Connecticut. But this morning, I'm greeting you on a beautiful day outside in Maine because I'm dropping off my kid at a seamanship competition. And I'm really glad that I get to spend a little bit of the day with you as well. Our opening words are adapted from words by Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs vision. Bring them with you, and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing and your powers to heal. These are the materials of community and tools of our life and work together. I have a story to share with you. It's from Turkey, and it goes like this. Nasruddin Hoja was a famous preacher and beloved in his land. Everyone spoke of his wisdom and kindness. Whenever the people held a feast or a festival, they invited the Hoja. One day, the Mukhtar of the Hoja's village invited him to a banquet. Nasruddin Hoja looked forward to the wonderful food and the good conversation he would have at the Mukhtar's home. On the morning of the feast, he set out to work in his vineyard. It was a fine summer day, maybe like the day that I'm experiencing today, and the Hoja enjoyed his work. However, he misjudged the time. As the sun sank lower in the sky, Nasruddin Hoja realized he would have no time to change his clothes. What shall I do? He asked himself. If I take the time to get dressed and washed, I'll be late for the feast. The Hoja did not like to keep people waiting, so he hurried off to the Muhtar's home, dressed in his working clothes, his hands and his face still soiled from the day's labors. When he arrived, those who were greeting the guests at the door turned away from him. Hoja made his own way into the house. He saw all the Muhtar's guests happily laughing and talking, but when the Hoja walked into the room, the others ignored him. Whenever the Hoja approached and spoke, they looked away, ignoring his words. Usually people came to ask the Hoja his advice and opinions, but on this evening no one spoke more than a word to him. Even the Muhtar ignored his guest. When the time came for the guests to be seated for supper, the Muhtar placed Nasruddin Hoja all the way across the room, as far away from him as possible. After several minutes, the Hoja excused himself and hurried out of the house. He walked back home as quickly as he could. Once at home, he took off his work clothes and he soaped and scrubbed himself until he seemed to shine. Then he dressed in the finest clothes he owned. He wore his flowing trousers and his most elegant silk shirt, and he wrapped the most exquisite turban around his head. Then he wrapped his new coat, just use your imagination here, his new coat around his shoulders. Though it was a warm evening, he knew the coat was dazzling. He looked down at himself and smiled. He looked very handsome. Now he walked calmly back down the road to the Muhtar's door. When he went inside, he was greeted and led straight to his host. When the Muhtar saw the Hoja, he rose at once and greeted his guest. He led him to the place of honor at the table right beside his own place. Throughout the rest of the meal, the Muhtar asked one question after another of the Hoja. "You are the wisest man I know," the Muhtar said, and all the others agreed and began to ask Hoja's advice and opinions on every subject under the sun. The servants rushed to bring Hoja the finest foods. And then, to everyone's astonishment, Nasruddin Hoja began to stuff his pockets with food. Each time he tucked a piece of bread or fruit in his pocket, he would look down at his coat, rub his hand along its sleeve, and say, "Eat, eat, my fine coat." The Muhtar stared. Everyone else stared. At last, the Muhtar could not contain his curiosity. "Hoja, tell us, what are you doing?" The Hoja leaned back in his seat and smiled. "When I came earlier this evening dressed in my work clothes, no one noticed me at all. But when I returned, you treated me as an honored guest. I have not changed. I am and always have been Nasruddin Hoja. And so I know it is my coat that you honor and adore. Since my coat is your guest of honor, I thought it only fair that it receive the largest portion of your feast." So ends the story.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Sierra Marie. Our tradition here at UUFCC is to share our life milestones, our joys and sorrows with each other by writing them down in the red book, the Book of Life in the back of the sanctuary. Oh, Lynn is bringing it up. Thank you, Lynn. It lives back there on that table to the right of the door as you come in, and it invites your entries. Thank you. When you have them to offer, or you can email them to Book of Life at UUFCC.org by Saturday, and we will read them and write them down in the book for you. This is our way of recognizing the sacred journey of life. All right, July 30th. This is from Laura Anderson. What a joy to see all y'all on Sunday during my brief visit to Florida. I believe my spirit has been renewed until next time in the fall. Take care of each other. Much love, Laura. As you know, she is out in Idaho. And I have two entries from Janet also. First, she says, I am so relieved that Lori's medical incident was not as serious as some of us feared. As I think probably most of us know by now, she had to go to the ER a couple of days ago. Diagnosis was vertigo. I'm glad she's home again, where Jackie will hopefully nurture her back to a full recovery. And we certainly hope so too. And Lori, if you're watching, we miss you like crazy. Please hurry and get well and come back to us. Oh, yes, and Janet has a second one. I almost put it away. She writes, I am scheduled for my DAT scan on Tuesday, August 1st. That's this coming Tuesday. The test should definitively diagnose whether it's Parkinson's or not. I'm hoping to get the results quickly, of course, although patience is not one of my strong suits. Continued positive vibes and support would be appreciated. You got it, Janice. This happens to be the last Sunday of the month, and this is a day when we drop a stone into water to represent a spoken or unspoken milestone in a symbolic act. There's a microphone. There is not a microphone. We forgot to set up the microphone. Could we do that? Let's see. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. I can't see where you're pointing or hear what you're saying, so I'm not much help. In any case, if you'd like to speak your joy or sorrow, please do so and drop a stone in the water. If you just want to keep it to yourself, you may silently do the same gesture by dropping the stone into the water. So I invite people to come up, please, who are motivated to do so. Yes.
I have to say something. Thank you, Janet. Janet is concerned when she plays. Janet, it was lovely today. Thank you.
I second what Carolyn just said, Janet, and that stone was for you. That last stone that I put in represents those joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in your hearts, and we hold them in our hearts too, knowing they may be there. That last stone symbolizes a piece of our communal lives, and it falls through the water of compassion in this beloved community. I hope you all feel surrounded by that love. At this point, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker more formally than I have so far, Reverend Sierra Maria Garfeo, who will offer us a meditation before beginning her sermon. Reverend Sierra Maria is a multi-disabled and neurodivergent minister and religious educator in New Haven, Connecticut, although not in New Haven this morning. She's also a wife and mother, an adoring caretaker of an 80-something pound dog and 2 delightful cats. I so completely relate, Reverend Sierra Marie. I have 2 50-pound dogs and 2 cats myself. The focus of the Reverend's ministry is public theology, which means that she's interested in how what we believe impacts what we do, and how what we do impacts what we believe. Welcome to UUFCC, Reverend Sierra Marie.
Here we are in this moment that will never be exactly the same as it is right now. Have you settled in? Whether you're online like me on Zoom or in person, I invite you to be present to this moment to the extent and in the ways that are comfortable for you. I invite you to notice any markers of the moment that in a friendly manner make themselves available to you. A sound or a smell, something you see or feel, or the experience of the floor or your seat holding you now. Right now, I don't know if you can hear what I'm hearing. I'm hearing cars passing on the road next to me, and I'm hearing a lawnmower. These are markers of this shared moment exactly as it is right now. We'll hold a moment of quiet soon, which will end with some soft words. And in the quiet, I invite you to imagine that all moments have these markers, and also love always with us, like the oxygen and carbon dioxide we breathe in and out. It is available to us as if an enthusiastic, invisible host. May we know that love is here now, in this moment, and in all moments to come, whatever the state of our arrival. There is nothing we must possess to be worthy of love. It seeks only our conspiring company and freely offers its availability now and always. Let's enter a time of quiet and turn our attention to the markers of this moment and to the love in this gathered body. So may it be. Last month at an LGBTQIA plus Pride festival, I used biodegradable glitter as if a holy oil and blessed those who came to be blessed with words that included the following. You are made of stardust, born of the infinite creativity of the universe. We rejoice and give thanks that you are shining your light in this world. Have you all heard this thing about being actual stardust? This is not a metaphor. That's a literal fact. The atoms of your body were made in stars that long ago exploded, sending elements out into the fathoms where they would eventually become you. And all the miraculousness that is this earth and the creatures with whom we share it. So if it's helpful for you today, receive this blessing also. You are made of stardust, born of the infinite creativity of the universe. We rejoice and give thanks that you are shining your light in this world. The systems and structures of our society that shape our imaginations do not, on the whole, celebrate or honor our stardust nature. In fact, these systems and structures tend to foster an imagination that we are something else entirely. Remember the Hoja in our story? He became an honored guest only when he was scrubbed up and in his fine clothes instead of his work clothes. The world is a bit like that. We are surrounded by messages, not that we are part of a stardust miracle, not that we should treat the earth and the people and the creatures with whom we share it as part of a stardust miracle, each and every one, but rather that the earth is an assemblage of products for us to extract and produce and consume, and that we are worth what we extract and produce and consume, or the benefit we derive from the extraction, production, and consumption of others. But you are no more what you wear than the Hoja. You aren't your clothes. You aren't the car you drive or whatever mode of transportation you take or the phone you use. You're not the place you work. You're not the place where you study or even your accomplishments in either place. You're not your employment status or the money you have. You're not the parts of your life that you were able to control today or the parts beyond your control. You're not even the things you have gotten right or wrong. In fact, I'll go further than the story to say that you are not your wisest thoughts or interesting ideas. Certainly, you are not limited to your thoughts and ideas. On a fundamental level, you are stardust. You come from the infinite creativity of the universe and belong to this earth with a gravitational pull, the strength of a gravitational pull. And because of the systems and structures we have built in this world, while we all lose out when our imaginations are shaped so fundamentally by this distorted lens of extraction, production, and consumption, the impact falls disproportionately across various groups of people. Some people are more affected than others. So let's return to the context of a pride celebration. As a queer person in a world where some religious imaginations consider me a threat, one might argue a threat to the production of producers and consumers. The argument, after all, that marriage is between a man and a woman is, or at least has its roots in a commitment to reproduction. The words of the blessing I just shared in the context of LGBTQIA pride are deeply healing and life-affirming words. They counter the life-diminishing imagination that has led this year to the proposal of extensive legislation that would undermine basic LGBTQIA rights in 46 states. They are life-affirming words that invite a different kind of imagination. In a book titled Emergent Strategy, Adrienne Marie Brown writes, "We are in an imagination battle. I want to share a little bit more of what she says about this. So let me read some excerpts from her book. Quote, how do we create and proliferate a compelling vision of economies and ecologies that center humans and the natural world over the accumulation of material? First, we imagine. We are in an imagination battle. Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and Renisha McBride and so many others are dead because in some white imagination, they were dangerous. And that imagination is so respected that those who kill based on an imagined racialized fear of Black people are rarely held accountable. Imagination has people thinking they can go from being poor to a millionaire as part of a shared American dream. Imagination turns brown bombers into terrorists and white bombers into mentally ill victims. Imagination gives us borders, gives us superiority, gives us race as an indicator of capability. I often feel I am trapped inside someone else's imagination, and I must engage my own imagination in order to break free. All of this imagining and the poverty of our current system is heightened because of scarcity economics. There isn't enough, so we need to hoard, enclose, divide, fence up, and prioritize resources and people. We have to imagine beyond those fears. We must imagine new worlds that transition ideologies and norms. This is a time travel exercise of the heart. What are the ideas that will liberate all of us? End quote. Again, these excerpts were from the book Emergent Strategy. I think this is why I keep sticking with my work as a religious professional 20-something years in, because there is so much potential in religious communities to imagine new worlds, to become communities of practice for transitioning ideologies and norms. That said, most of the time in religious community, we reenact what we imagine to be the most moral versions of the ideologies and norms of the world around us, writing off imaginations of new worlds as unrealistic and even dangerous. But those of us who have been, by way of the existing ideologies and norms, kept at the margins, made bearers of the brunt of suffering, understand that our participation in the ideologies and norms of the world around us is what is often unrealistic and even dangerous. I say this not only as a queer minister, but as a disabled minister. I'm multiply disabled and neurodivergent. This includes having a couple chronic illnesses, one that involves continuously wearing medical equipment. It includes hearing loss and use of a hearing aid. It includes having a diagnosis of a cognitive disability no longer in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which I became fairly certain while getting my master's degree in social work would today be a 3-part diagnosis of autism, ADHD, and another cognitive disability. When I say I'm disabled, the language I'm using is particular and purposeful, designed for the imagination of a new kind of world. Disabled is a political category. Substitute words meant to be gentle, like special needs, handy-capable, physically or mentally challenged, or differently abled, are often preferred by our parents and supports, but are not the chosen terms of the majority of us who are disabled. These words identify disability in personal differences rather than identifying the ways that we build systems and structures and physical places that are disabling because we have designed them with just a few kinds of people in mind. These substitutes are apolitical terms. That means the opposite of political, whereas to be disabled is a political term. I'm disabled not by my differences and not even by my impairments, but by a world in which my participation, if imagined at all, was imagined as an afterthought or feared as a complication of norms. Notice also that I'm not using person-first language. I'm not saying I'm a person with disabilities. I'm using identity-first language. I am a disabled person. This locates me in the political community of disabled people. Substitute words for disability and person-first language have the effect of blunting the political organizing especially of young disabled people, by preventing them from locating themselves in the political community that is disabled. It does this by nurturing their understanding of their own experiences in individualistic terms. I wish I would have known that I was part of the disabled political community as a young person experiencing the micro and macro aggressions, the various forms of oppression that a disabled child experiences. For years, I thought I was the problem, that things would get better if I could just learn to be human right. Of course, when talking about people, I hope you'll mirror the language they use for themselves. People's ways of self-identifying are important, especially for people whose humanity is so often denied by others. But when speaking of disability more generally, you should know that for political reasons, even though many parents and teachers and medical providers have been trained to say person with a disability, many disabled communities now prefer identity-first language, disabled person. This is especially common among autistic people, deaf people, and blind people, even if they use terms like deaf, as in part of deaf culture, rather than disabled. The identity comes first. Disabled activist Norman Coons taught me about a white man named John McKnight who worked to support the integration of the auto industry during the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. Coons likes to quote McKnight in saying, "Revolutions begin when people who are defined as problems achieve the power to redefine the problem." Let me say that again. Revolutions begin when people who are defined as problems achieve the power to redefine the problem. So what I'm offering you now is a disabled definition of disability, the social model. It differs quite a bit from the medical model of disability that locates disability in the individual person with a difference. In the social model, it is the failure of imagination that all bodies belong that disables people. And by bodies, I mean bodies inclusive of minds. But it must be said that this isn't just a failure of imagination. This is also active oppression. It's exemplified in everything from the history in the US of eugenics and so-called ugly laws designed to prevent the appearance of disabled people in public, to the continued allowance of sub-minimum wages for disabled people, as little as 22 cents per hour, the lack of marriage equality for disabled people, and even restricted voting rights. So as you can probably tell, today's reflections haven't been rooted in rejoicing in the love of parents, caretakers, and other loved ones who have disabled people in their lives, though I'm one of those too. The reflections I'm offering today instead are rooted completely in my experiences as a disabled person. This is what disability activist Amy Kenny calls a disability justice ethos. An orientation or a way of looking at the world that comes from the experiences of being disabled and centers justice making. This reflection also may be one of the hardest ones I've written. And part of the reason for that is that most people are taught that the things they need to know about disability are not to stare, to be nice, to not ask too many questions in public, and to try to include others. It's not enough. It's like thinking we can undo systems and structures of white supremacy by being nice. Along with other subjects, children are not taught. Children have rarely been taught disability history. Too many people do not know that there have been multiple civil rights movements among disabled people, especially disabled people of color. Many of us are left subconsciously imagining that the Americans with Disabilities Act came from able people deciding, hey, we should include disabled people too, and figuring out how to be nice about letting disabled people do things like enter public buildings. By the way, I'll note here that religious communities were among lobbyists working to defeat the Americans with Disabilities Act. And to this day, religious communities remain exempt. Talk about reflecting the ideologies and norms of the world around us. I would venture to guess that most people, including parents of disabled people, and actually some disabled people too, have no idea, have never been exposed, and definitely have not paused to consider that there are disabled scholars who have invested lifetimes of work in disability studies. as with other identity groups, and have developed an incredible body of work around a variety of topics related to disability, from history to theory to literature and culture to politics to ethics and theology. Just like any identity category, there is a huge amount of high-quality scholarship done by people belonging to the identity group. So the challenge in preparing to offer this reflection has been like this, to use a metaphor. It's been like there's an ocean behind me. Oh, there's a big truck going by, so I'm going to wait a second. It's been like there's an ocean behind me, and though the waves keep tumbling in, I can only offer you a bucket of water in our time together. Though I know that even if you've spent a lifetime at the water's edge, you may never have dipped a bucket in its waters, and you will need much more than a single bucket I offer if we're going to build sandcastles together. So let's just start with one thing, with rooting ourselves in a new imagination in which all bodies belong. What would that mean for you if you could practice not insisting that your body earn its place, not insisting that it prove its worth, not harming yourself and others by heaping praise on your weight loss and heaping shame on your weight gain, not killing yourself literally to keep up with capitalist demands, fostering a world in which those demands are normalized, even though there are those of us who will never be able to keep up, who may never participate at all, and whose lives have greatness anyway, not because of what other things we can do, but because we are stardust, or as Christians say, image bearers of the divine. The suffering I experience is real, but it does not alter that I am stardust. What a strange and inconceivable miracle that this stardust has taken on life for this time, whatever form precisely it's shaped itself into. You might say to me now, oh, but Sierra Marie, we're Unitarian Universalists. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And I want to remind you that whether we strive for the most moral versions of the world we live in as Unitarian Universalists, we must be intentional if we want to transition ideologies and norms in order to build new worlds. Let me share something with you as a final example before I close out my reflections. In the world as it exists now, Unitarian Universalists may affirm the inherent worth and dignity of disabled people, may even want to host disabled people at the metaphorical welcome table, particularly if those people can practice not acting disabled while at the table. But they do not imagine disabled people as hosts at the table, or disabled ways as norms for behavior. They do not imagine disabled people in positions of leadership, and particularly as their ministers or religious educators. Heck, many churches have pulpit designs that would keep wheelchair users from speaking just once from the pulpit, let alone every week. And that isn't even considering people whose motor issues include variations in speech or communication. The reason I know Unitarian Universalists do not imagine having disabled people as ministers is because when I moved through the Unitarian Universalist ministerial credentialing system, preparing for my ordination a few years ago, the system was very clearly designed for abled people, not for me. Nobody had imagined someone like me trying to become a minister. When I went for my credentialing interview, there was no process in place for requesting accommodations to allow disabled candidates to show up. When I requested accommodations, I was told that if I couldn't make it through my credentialing interview without accommodations, I wouldn't be able to make it through a congregational search process for a minister. Nobody questioned what that said about our search processes. Instead, there just wouldn't be a way to imagine me as a minister if I couldn't fit the existing structures that were built for abled people. It is no wonder that so few disabled people make it through this credentialing system, and that even fewer are employed, and most are significantly underemployed. We as religious communities have so much potential to become communities of practice for transitioning ideologies and norms, but we also have so much work to do. It is all too easy to slip into practicing being the most moral version of existing ideologies and norms. Being the nicest community in the room might mean that we don't turn anyone away at the door or ignore the next Hoja who enters the door, But it doesn't mean that we won't behave as if the clothing the Hoja wears is the real guest. And it certainly doesn't mean that the Hoja will ever be a host. We have restricted imaginations, and we will need to practice imagining more expansively, imagining in ways that violate existing norms, even when it is uncomfortable. The frameworks through which we understand disability will either prepare us for a continuation of norms or prepare us for a conspiring towards something better, something worthy of a stardust miracle. May we seize each and every possibility to practice new ways. May it be so, and so may it be.
Wow, that was truly eye-opening. I will be thinking about these comments, these reflections for a long time. Thank you so much, Reverend Sierra Marie. Identity first, not person first. Excellent, thank you again. We exist here as a congregation because you and I, members and friends, are the supporters of our overall ministry. The building, the grounds, the paid staff, the donations, everything. That is both our privilege and our responsibility to keep our work alive. So whether that's by pledge or cash or donation or online, your generosity is always needed. However, if you are with us for the first time, don't feel obligated to give today. Your presence is our gift. Ushers, now come forward. Just lovely, Janet. Just lovely. Thank you. If Corey would come forward, I know he has an announcement, and I will make this quick. Just a reminder that today at 3 o'clock, the secular community of Southwest Florida is meeting here. And at noon on Wednesday, the Brown Bag Social Luncheon will take place. Come forward, Corey, if you would.
Me again. I just wanted to remind everybody in the updates there is a class for tomorrow at 11 o'clock. We're going to go over how to run the new Social Hall computer. For anybody who doesn't know, it's now a Mac, so there are some things that you need to know. Now, there are going to be certain parts to it. One part of the class is having an introductory to Mac as a whole. And if it goes well, and like if I have good attendance and people like what they see, I'm debating on the idea of continuing the classes. So I'll look forward to seeing you all there.
Thanks, Corey. We now have the closing words from Reverend Sierra Marie.
Let's close with a blessing, adapted from a piece by Andrea Hawkins Camper. Blessed are we who have gathered with open hearts together today. Blessed are we, the chalice lighters of resistance, justice, love, and faith. Blessed are we, the heretics, the outcasts, the travelers of our own way. Blessed are we, the border crossers, the refugees, the immigrants, the poor, the wanderers who are not lost. Blessed are we, the transgressors, the trespassers, the passers-by, the cause takers, the defiant, the compliant. Blessed are we, the disabled and the abled. Blessed are we, the hand extenders, the sign makers, the protesters, the protectors. Blessed are we, the trans women, the trans men, the non-binary, the cisgender, the multigender, the no gender. Blessed are we, the friend, the stranger, the lonely, the hidden, the visible, the authentic. Blessed are we who rise in solidarity. Blessed are we who cannot. Blessed are we who do not. May you be a blessing, and may you go forth this day, imagining a new world into being.
As Mary Jane comes back and extinguishes the chalice for us, please join me in reading these words in your order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. May these ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace. Let's rise in body or spirit, please, and join together for our closing hymn in the Teal hymnal, 1057, Go Lifted Up. And put your phones back on, too, before I forget.
Lord,
us for refreshments and conversation in the social hall.